Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today's workshop. My name is Michael Kalish, and I work at the Star Career Development Center at Baruch. I'm the Senior Associate Director handling employee relations, career fairs, everything under the umbrella of employee relations. I also meet privately with students for career counseling and job search appointments and resume reviews and all of that jazz. I'm really happy to see you all here today. This is actually our first time presenting this workshop. So we're really excited to be able to share this information, this very important information with our students. This came out of a need just from seeing the number of job scams that were reported to us in the last couple of years, and we felt it was really important to put together a presentation to formally educate our students. So again, thank you all for joining. Thank you for your interest in this topic. We wish we did not have to do a workshop like this. We wish job scams did not exist, but it is an unfortunate reality. So this is how to avoid job scams. And of course, if there's any questions, please feel free to jot them down into the chat, and I will be happy to address them as we go. And if I'm not able to address them throughout the workshop, I'm happy to address them at the end. This workshop is scheduled to go until 1:30, and again, we are recording. So we're happy to send you the recorded version once we have everything saved, and we'll be able to share with you the link so that you can view this moving forward and have access to the presentation. So as a result of attending today's workshop, you will be able to identify suspicious job offers from emails, job boards, messages, etc. Hopefully, some of you have already been doing your due diligence in this area, but hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident in terms of identifying these kinds of things moving forward after today's workshop. You'll also be able to discuss 4 different types of scams commonly reported, and identify at least 3 warning signs that someone may be trying to scam you. And lastly, to be able to highlight strategies to protect yourself from being scammed. So this is what's on the agenda for this workshop. So we have a brief introduction, evaluating email offers and job postings. Many scams will come through emails, which some of you may have already experienced. Different kinds of scams we'll talk about, some additional red flags, protecting your information, and lastly, reporting a scam and the steps involved in doing that. Okay, so the introduction. So again, this came out of an increase in job scams being reported to our center, whether it be something posted on our own portal or externally. Students were starting to let us know more and more, which we really appreciated for the protection of everybody. So at a time when we're so heavily dependent on technology, of course, we're all always going to be at an increased risk for predatory internet behavior and email scams. They can take various formats: check deposit schemes, fraudulent job opportunities to earn money from home, appeals to help others in distress. Hopefully, you'll be able to learn some tips that you can properly evaluate if a job is offering a scam. So again, we noticed at the start of the pandemic that the number of scams being reported was significantly higher than before the pandemic. And so it's a shame that scammers started to take advantage of an unfortunate situation and started to really tap into these scams more and email people and scam their accounts, and then send blast emails using somebody else's email address. It was really a shame to see such an increase in that. Scams have always been an issue, but during the pandemic, we definitely noticed a drastic increase. All right, so evaluating job offers. You want to definitely, when you get any kind of an email, for job offers, you want to take a look at the source of the job, where it's coming from. Take a look at the email address it's coming from. So if it's coming from like a personal email address, like a Gmail or an Outlook or a Hotmail, definitely that's going to be a red flag as opposed to coming from a company email address. So you definitely want to look at the source, especially if it's someone who contacts you without you having ever applied for the job. And sometimes this can get a little dicey because somebody that's applying for a lot of positions, they may receive an email and they might have to think, did I actually apply to this? When you're applying to so many positions, it can kind of get lost in the shuffle. So just kind of a little off track, it might help actually if you keep a record of the positions that you're applying to, either in an Excel spreadsheet or any kind of a journal, just jotting things down so you have a record of which ones you've actually applied to. Avoid conversations with recruiters or people who have unclear identities and contact information. If something seems a little sketchy, it probably is. Kind of go with your gut on that. And definitely check that the contact information of the employer or the recruiter matches who they say they actually work for. And you want to be especially wary of emails coming from non-business email accounts, as I mentioned before. Okay, so again, you want to look at kind of all these things. If something does, and you're going to hear me say this a couple times throughout this workshop, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. So again, looking at this brief message here, it looks a little sketchy. It looks a little unprofessional. It looks like something you might receive as a text, not something like a formal job offer. So again, you want to take those things into consideration. Okay. And then when it comes to actually evaluating job offers, be wary of unprofessional emails that might contain punctuation and grammar errors. That's a big red flag. If you're reading through something and more things are capitalized than they should be, or things are not in the right tense, or if there's spelling errors, that's definitely a red flag that you'll be able to pick up on if you just read their message. Sometimes scammers pretend to be from an organization that for example, we have our own protocol when it comes to approving new employers and new contacts into our own portal. And as you probably all know, we use Handshake, which we call Star Search. And a couple of years ago, somebody registered under the guise of being a KPMG employee. And the email address they used did have a KPMG domain. It was at kpmg1.com. But when we looked through all of the existing contacts with KPMG, the number 1 was not there. It was just at kpmg.com. So we have to be little detectives. And that was something that stood out to us. And that was a red flag. And we have our own policies and procedures and protocol when it comes to approving a new contact or a new employer. And so that was definitely something that stood out to us. So in a sense, we all have to be little detectives when it comes to these kinds of things, especially students as well. When you hear from these scammers, sometimes they look to prey on students that may be a little bit green when it comes to the job application process, that may be a little bit more inexperienced. And so that's why it's so important that you're educated on what to look for and what to kind of look out for. Check that the business has a website and that the email of the person you're corresponding with is coming from the same domain. So again, you want to kind of match those up to make sure that it's legitimate. So in this example here, you'll see the company is Asana, but the person that's sending it is sending it from a Gmail email address. So definitely right there, that is a red flag. Employers should know better than to send something from a personal email address that will really stand out. So again, it should be coming from a company email address. Search the exact message that was sent out or the email address that it came from, and then check if anybody else has reported it as a scam. Many times students report scams to us, and the most recent one lately has been with the World Health Organization, or otherwise known as WHO. And we've heard from probably at least a half a dozen to a dozen students in the last few months that have received an email posing as that organization. And some of you might be nodding your head right now saying like, oh, yep, I got that email. So you definitely want to make sure that you're reporting it to us, letting us know, and then we actually report it to public safety. We share it out with the college, with our college colleagues, just to educate people about that. Okay, moving right along. All right, evaluating a job posting. So you definitely want to consider avoiding get-rich-fast schemes. These are definitely going to be too good to be true. They're a way to lure inexperienced people in. If they flash a lot of dollar signs at you, a lot of dollar amounts, that's definitely not a good sign. That's definitely a red flag. Anything that provides high income for part-time work or no work at all, again, too good to be true. This is a way that a lot of scammers will lure people in. Be wary of jobs that require little to no experience at all. And also if the description is very vague and they're basically making it seem like you can make a lot of money, but they're not exactly telling you what you really have to do. That is another red flag. Avoid jobs that do not require a formal interview process or no interview at all. If you're getting a job offer and you never had to interview with that company, don't accept it. That is definitely a red flag. And again, these scammers will prey on people some students will fall prey to these things if they're really actively looking, and if they're not having a lot of luck, and if they're feeling a little bit down about not finding something, that your mindset can really be changed at that point. And so if you see a scam email that comes through, some people do fall for these things. And so it's really important to have a level head and to do your due diligence and to know what to look out for. Avoid jobs that prioritize urgency over qualifications, requiring you to start right away with no questions asked. So if they're making it seem like you have to start tomorrow, and if you don't start when they're asking you to, you're going to lose out on the opportunity, definitely a red flag. You should never be pushed into a role. You should never feel rushed. That's definitely a red flag. And then lastly, be careful of online forms that are requesting personal information as part of the application process. You want to check that the form is located on their business website of the employer requesting that information. Chances are, if it's a scam, it will not be on their website. So they're just asking you to fill out a very basic form, probably collecting personal information about you. Okay, moving right along. All right, so this is just what a basic data entry scam job might look like. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, so again, this is coming from an Outlook email address. The description looks very vague. It's not written in the most professional way. There's certain words that are capitalized that maybe shouldn't be. It's lacking commas, like little things. It looks like it was written by like a third grader, you know, something like that. You want to make sure that you're really looking at these position descriptions very carefully if you're receiving these random emails. It's really, really important. Okay, pyramid marketing. Give me just a second. I'm looking in the chat. Is there any possible reasons why they are doing this besides scamming money from us? That's a good question. That would be my guess as to the main reason why they're looking to scam folks. It's scamming money, but it's also accessing personal information, and because that can be that could lead to identity theft. If there's collecting any personal information from someone, a social security number, their date of birth, their mother's maiden name, anything like that, they might be asking you to fill out a form that has that information, and that could then lead to identity theft. You know, so it's that, and it's also wanting to get money from people. I hope that kind of answers your question. If not, feel free to ask a follow-up question, but thank you for posing that question. Pyramid marketing has been a common scheme for a very, very long time. I remember, you know, when I was in college, when I got out of college, I remember hearing about different pyramid marketing schemes where you're promised a certain amount of money, where you're working under the umbrella of quote unquote a larger organization. But at the end of the day, you really won't make much, if any, money, and you know, there's something very sketchy about these kinds of scenarios. So you definitely want to kind of, if you want, you could even do a Google search on different kinds of pyramid marketing schemes to learn about what the nature of them are all about. But generally, you know, you'll either have to sell something, or you'll be promised a certain amount of money every couple of weeks or every month, and you're working under the guise of a large organization. But at the end of the day, you're really just earning them money, but you're not really taking in a lot of money at the end of the day, or it's just not a legitimate business. There's so many different scenarios. So again, just something else to be aware of. An unsolicited job offer. Again, this is coming from a Gmail address. This is pretty common to see these. As far as I know, these are actually real messages that we've seen, that we just incorporated into this workshop to show you what these could actually look like. Sometimes you might get emails like this that are completely unsolicited, that you never applied to, and they're just sending them out in a mass way to anybody. And so they're looking for people to fall prey to these kinds of scenarios. But you'll notice it's sometimes not always grammatically written. Sometimes it's a little bit awkward to read it. Sometimes it doesn't have a flow to it. Again, it looks like it might have been written by someone in elementary school. So again, as you're reading these things, if something doesn't seem right, it's probably not. So again, listen to your gut on these things. The more that you see scams and emails like this, the more you'll know what to look out for. You'll become a lot more savvy. Okay, rebate processor. So this is coming from a Baruch mail email address. That's something that a lot of scammers have done in the last couple of years. We've noticed they'll tap into a Baruch email address, and so it makes it look like it's being sent by an actual person. And then we'll hear from that actual person saying, you know, my email address was hacked. Please don't pay attention to these. So they let us know. Then we have to send a blast email out to the Baruch community. So it really gets dicey. So again, be careful. If you're hearing about these positions from a Baruch, what looks like a Baruch student, it's most likely going to be a scam. If they're also letting you know, like this particular scenario, you know, make money simply by filling out online forms. They're making it seem like it's a very simple job. You're going to make, you know, at least $15 an hour. It's very silly. You just have to wait, and then you get paid. And very, very easy. You can work from home, whatever they might say. Again, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And here's what I've been mentioning. So kind of have this phrase in the back of your head, just moving forward as you're perusing different job descriptions, whether it be on our site or an external site like LinkedIn or Indeed or Idealist. There's a lot of other sites out there. Scammers can be very savvy, and they've become more savvy over time, which means that we've had to become more savvy as well. All right, some additional red flags. All right, so you definitely don't want to send money to employers as part of the application process. That is a huge red flag. Sometimes they'll tell you that you'll have to purchase kits or software or office supplies that might be required for the job. That is definitely a red flag. You should never have to send money in advance. We actually have had a couple of students that have lost money over these kinds of scenarios. And sometimes it's in the thousands where they'll lose money. And it's really a shame because, like I said, scammers will sometimes prey on students that are actively looking for opportunities. And a lot of the time, students are just inexperienced with this process and with knowing what to look for. Hence why we are having this workshop. Do not deposit checks if you have not worked. All right, please do not do that. It might wind up, wiping out your bank account or taking out a certain amount of money from your account if that's a fake check, and they're going to hold that against your account. So you definitely want to be very weary of that. If you ever receive a check, bring it to the police. You definitely want to report that to the police. If it's something that if you have not worked for and they're just sending you a check telling you to deposit it for no reason, okay? Scammers often insist that you pay by sending money through a money transfer company or by putting money on a gift card. And this would again be for quote unquote office supplies or something like that. Some might send you a check that will later turn out to be fake or tell you to deposit it and then send them money. All right, so be very weary if they're asking you to send money or receive money or getting a check in any kind of way. If they're giving you a series of steps as to what you need to do with that check and you haven't even started work yet, that is all red flags, all big, big red flags. Do not engage in text-only interviews. This has been more common in the last couple of years. We've actually had some students send us screenshots of texts that they've received from bogus employers and from scammers, just so we can see exactly what these messages look like. And typically, again, they're not grammatical, there's no flow, it's very unprofessional, and they're very vague in their description of these positions. Usually they just talk more about how much money the student can make. And so it's really, really, it's a shame and it's sad to see that. So something like this on the left here, your daily activity is to process invoices, which includes receiving payments from clients, processing, preparing documentation reports. So it's a little generic in terms of what they're actually providing here, like in terms of a description. And they're telling you that you would use your personal bank account to do the processing and to actually do your work. Huge red flag. You should never have to use your personal bank account for any position. Okay, so make sure you have this information in the back of your mind should you ever see these kinds of postings. All right, so protecting your personal information. You definitely don't want to share any of the following information as part of the application process. And again, this goes back to the question from earlier in terms of identity theft. If you share any of this information, your social security number, your birth date, bank account number, credit card number, all of this information can easily lead to somebody claiming your identity, which can be a nightmare. And that is something you definitely don't want to have to go through. It can last for months or years. It is a huge nightmare. If you know of anybody that's been through it, I'm sure they have nothing nice to say about that experience. So be really careful with who you share that information with, unless it is with a legitimate company on a formal job application and you know that you applied to that position. You definitely want to keep these things in mind. Do not share any information that might be used to guess answers to security questions. Mother's maiden name, city you were born. Sometimes they're really savvy and they'll start asking you very legitimate questions, and then they'll throw in one of these questions like, what's your favorite color, what's your mother's maiden name, very loosely, and you might just kind of think it's okay because they were already asking you normal questions. So again, you want to have your detective hat on as you're going through any of these processes, and be aware that if you're asked to provide this information, it's most likely a scam. Okay. Do not register for seemingly legitimate job sites that ask for a lot of personal information to simply access the site. Really, the only info you should be asked for is your username and a password. That's really only the only information you would be creating to access that site. You should never be asked to provide personal information to access a basic job site. Okay, so again, have this in the back of your mind moving forward. Okay, reporting a scam. So you definitely want to make sure you are doing your due diligence. Give me just 1 second here as I adjust this. 1 sec. Okay. All right. So the Better Business Bureau, otherwise known as the BBB, you can definitely file a complaint with them. The company that you're reporting does not need to be registered for you to file that complaint. Also contact your local police department. They might be able to help or simply warn others of that same scam. You might actually find that what you're reporting has already been reported multiple times, which can actually be a bit of a feeling of validation. You know, the fact that you're reporting it and that others have reported it as well, that might give you a little bit of comfort. Contact the site or the job board where the scam originated, or use the methods they may have in place to report the fraudulent job posting. They'll definitely appreciate you reaching out to them so that they can remove any bogus positions or companies from their sites. If the scam involved a website attempting to extract personal info, report it to Google is what we would suggest. All right, so basically, the big takeaway here, the summary is don't give your personal or financial information in response to a request that you did not expect. Okay, this is a huge one. If you're being asked to provide anything like that, your credit card info, bank account info, social security number, mother's maiden name, all of these are red flags, and you really should not be asked those kinds of questions for a basic job application. Okay. Resist the pressure to act immediately. You might feel rushed. They might make you feel like it's an urgent thing. If you don't reply right away, you're going to miss out on this amazing opportunity. Take your time, tread lightly with these kinds of things. Don't give in to any possible pressure that they're trying to put on you. Know how scammers tell you to pay. So again, if they're telling you to pay through a check cashing place or something like that, or they're telling you that they're going to send you a check that you need to deposit for you to use for office supplies, ignore those kinds of things. You should never be depositing anything, especially before you start to work. That is a huge red flag. And lastly, stop and talk to someone that you trust, like report it to our center, maybe talk to any of your peers, friends, people in classes to see if they've experienced the same kind of thing. Chances are they probably have. So it's just important for you to kind of put this out there and not to fall prey to any of these kinds of scams that do exist. I'm going to show you a brief section on our website. Give me just 1 second. So if you visit our regular website and you hover over the Students tab, you'll see the first section says Avoiding Job Scams. So that is going to take you to this section here. And you'll see a lot of what we just spoke about is listed in this section for you to refer to if you feel like you need a refresher from today's presentation. Currently known scams, we've actually listed them here. So these are some currently known very common scams. So feel free to peruse this section to get a sense as to the kind of scams that do exist that we've seen that have been reported to us. This was a common one, the Paul Harrison one from a while back. A lot of people at Baruch received this one. So this might look familiar to some of you. Pet sitter scam, coming from an Outlook email address. When they tell you the exact amount that you're going to be paid weekly, usually that is a red flag. Professor internship scam, UNICEF. It's a shame that they're using these very, good, reputable organizations. So that's why they feel like a lot of students are going to believe it, because it's coming from these very reputable companies. This was the one I mentioned before from the World Health Organization. This has been an ongoing scam for years. Okay, so peruse this section when you have a chance. And then if you want to report things, there's the I've been scammed section. So again, a lot of this I just mentioned throughout the workshop. So feel free to peruse this section if you have questions on how you can report a scam. We have all of this information for you right here in the workshop. And I think I might have missed a slide actually now that I'm looking back through this. Give me 1 second. Yep, I think I skipped right over this slide, so forgive me. So if you feel like you have been scammed, or if you feel like you find out once you deposit a check that was bogus, contact your financial institution immediately so you can put a hold on your cards, your account, anything that you need to. Place a freeze on your credit report to avoid any kind of identity theft. These are the 3 companies, as many of you probably know, Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. You would have to, as far as I know, you only need to contact one of those 3. If I'm wrong, Any of my colleagues that are on here, feel free to chime in, but I feel like you don't have to contact all three. I think you just need to contact one. Save all correspondence with the potential scammer and any other proof like receipts, bank account info, so that it might be able to be used if you're reporting it to the police, or if your bank is requesting for follow-up information to investigate the case. They're gonna need that information. And like I said, students have actually shared with us emails they've received or even screenshots of texts that they've received. So you don't want to delete those things quite so fast. And lastly, you can report the scam either to the Internet Crime Complaint Center or the Federal Trade Commission, otherwise known as the FTC. So if there are any questions, I'm definitely open to receiving questions at this point. I know this workshop wasn't as long as expected. If anybody has questions, or if you've been scammed, or if you just want to share your experience with others that might be on the chat at this point, feel free to do so. We're always open to hearing people's insight and possible scams that they've heard about. It might be a little bit different than what we've heard about. If any of this resonated with you, I would love to hear that as well. Either you speaking aloud or just typing it into the chat. We're really open to hearing your thoughts as well. Are there any questions at all? I guess everybody's processing the information. It's a lot of information to take in. I'm just going to stop the recording at this point.